What changes when money is involved in a relationship?
Well, it really shifts from a romantic partnership into a shared system of survival. Like the moment you introduce money, you are no longer just sharing a life. You are colliding two completely separate histories,
Right.
two different sets of deeply ingrained fears, and, a highly complex web of unspoken expectations.
It changes the literal gravity of the room, doesn't it? I
Right.
mean, we often talk about love and partnership as these sort of ethereal, poetic concepts.
Yeah,
You fall in
exactly.
love, you move in together, and everything is beautifully abstract, but then the rent is due. Or
Yeah.
someone wants to buy a wildly expensive jacket.
Right.
Or you suddenly realize you have entirely different definitions of what a savings account is actually meant to do.
Yeah.
And in a fraction of a second, that ethereal romance has to navigate the very rigid, tangible reality of dollars and cents.
Which is exactly what makes it the ultimate behavioral anchor. Money forces abstract values into measurable actions.
Yeah, and today, we're going deep inside that reality. This isn't a deep dive about how to get rich, just so everyone listening knows.
Right, no stock tips here.
Exactly. We aren't giving you stock tips or the best real estate portfolios to build with your partner. This is a mission to understand the human mind. We are exploring how money silently influences human behavior.
How it shapes those thousands of invisible decisions we make, every single day.
Exactly, and how it fundamentally rewires the relationships we hold most dear.
Mm.
We are going to gently follow the flow of money to understand the deeper currents of our habits, our hidden emotions, the fragile nature of trust, and the expectations we carry into our homes.
And to do that properly, we really need a solid foundation.
We do. And we've pulled together a fascinating stack of sources for this deep dive. Instead of just looking at one viewpoint, we are crossing disciplines. We're pulling academic rigor from the Journal of Financial Therapy and the Journal of Consumer Research.
Amazing sources.
Yeah, but we are pairing that with practical, on-the-ground frameworks from financial planners and therapists who actually sit in the room with couples.
Yeah.
People like Kelly Klingeman and Dr. Amanda Kraft.
Right, the people seeing it in real time.
Exactly. We're also layering in insights from relationship platforms like Modern Husbands, Marriage Kids, and Money, and the broader financial well-being guides developed by Combank. We want the full picture here.
And before we unpack any of those sources, I think it is vital to establish the tone of our exploration today. Looking at our own financial behaviors or our partner's behaviors, it can trigger an immediate defensive response.
Oh, absolutely. Walls go right up.
Yeah, so our goal here today is completely neutral.
We are acting as behavioral naturalists.
Precisely. We are just observing the wildlife. There is absolutely no judgment here. We are not criticizing how anyone manages their bank account or pays for their groceries.
We simply want to reflect on the patterns that naturally appear over time when two individual people with two entirely different brains try to share a single financial life.
Behavioral naturalists. I love that framework.
Yeah, so to understand what happens when two people merge their financial lives, we actually have to start by walking backward,
Mm,
way backward. We have to look at why people behave the way they do before they even enter a relationship.
right, before they even meet.
Exactly. Before you even swipe right on a dating app or meet your partner at a coffee shop, your financial instincts have already been programmed.
Yeah, and if we look at the foundational research by Dr. Brad Klontz and Dr. Sonia Britt in the Journal of Financial Therapy, we encounter a concept that perfectly explains this programming. It is called money scripts.
Money scripts, okay.
Right. A money script is a core underlying belief about money that drives your day-to-day financial behavior. But the defining characteristic of a money script is that it operates almost entirely within your subconscious.
So you don't even know what's happening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And crucially, these scripts are typically formed in childhood, usually before the age of 7.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because telling someone that they formed their entire adult financial worldview before they were 7 years old,
Sounds crazy, I know.
it is a wild proposition. I mean, before most of us even understand the concept of long division or how a credit card works, a 5-year-old doesn't know what an interest rate is. So how are they forming a permanent psychological script about it?
Well, they aren't learning the math, they're learning the emotion. This happens through social learning theory, which is a psychological concept pioneered by Albert Bandura.
Like Bandura.
Yeah, so Bandura demonstrated that children are essentially highly sensitive observation machines. They don't need direct instruction to learn behavior. They just absorb the environmental cues around them.
So they are reading the room even if they don't know what the meeting is actually about.
Exactly. A child might not understand the mechanical function of a mortgage or a foreclosure, but they absolutely feel the physiological tension in the room when a stack of envelopes arrives in the mail.
Oh, wow.
They notice that when dad sits down to pay the bills, his jaw is clenched and he snaps at anyone who interrupts him. Or, on the flip side, they notice that the only time the parents stop arguing and seem genuinely happy is when they are out spending money at a restaurant.
Or coming home with shopping bags. So it's the emotional association. Money equals stress, or money equals temporary peace.
And those associations are often permanently locked into the brain during what the researchers call financial flashpoints.
A flashpoint sounds volatile, like a highly emotional, dramatic event that burns a memory into your mind.
It is, yeah. It's a trauma or a moment of intense emotional heightening centered around resources. Could be something catastrophic, like witnessing a parent's bankruptcy, the sudden loss of a family home, or parents going through a bitter, drawn-out divorce where money is used as a weapon.
But I'm guessing a flashpoint doesn't have to be a singular explosion, right?
No, not at all. It can be a chronic condition. It could be the persistent, aching feeling of a parent working 3 minimum wage jobs, constantly exhausted and never being home.
So the child subconsciously links the concept of earning money directly to absence and exhaustion. To them, money is an opportunity. Money is the monster that steals their parent away.
Yes. The emotional intensity of these flashpoints forges the belief. It bypasses logical processing entirely and becomes their unquestioned reality. It is just, the way the world works.
And according to the Kant's money script, Inventory Revised, which is the psychological assessment tool these researchers developed to measure this, there are 4 primary childhood rule books that we end up carrying into adulthood.
Right, 4 main scripts.
So what's the first one?
The first script they identified is money avoidance. Individuals operating under this script hold a deep-seated, often entirely subconscious belief that money is inherently bad, or that the mere concept of money provokes anxiety, fear, and even disgust.
Disgust. That's a strong word for something we literally need to survive. What does that actually look like in practice?
Well, it manifests as a belief that rich people are greedy, that wealth corrupts, or that money is the root of all social evil. But the most insidious part of the money-avoiding script is the internalized belief of, I do not deserve money.
Wow. It almost frames poverty or financial struggle as a moral virtue. Like, if money's bad, then not having it makes me good.
It can definitely feel like a moral stance to the individual holding the script, but it creates immense, painful cognitive dissonance. The research notes that money avoiders often vacillate wildly.
What do you mean by vacillate?
Well, on one hand, they hold great contempt for wealth and wealthy people. On the other hand, they harbor this conflicting secret belief that if they just had more money, all of their daily struggles and miseries would vanish.
That sounds exhausting. You hate the thing, but you desperately need the thing, so you just end up hating yourself for needing it.
Wow.
Do we know who typically holds this script?
Demographically, the researchers found this script is noticeably prevalent among young single people. But fascinatingly, it is also incredibly high among mental health professionals.
Mental health professionals. That actually makes a strange sort of sense.
Right.
If you are deeply empathetic and you are drawn to a helping profession where you sit with people's pain all day, you might naturally repel the idea of personal, capitalistic accumulation as your primary life goal. You might view it as selfish.
But that noble impulse often leads to self-sabotage. If a therapist subconsciously believes that accumulating wealth makes them a bad person, they will unconsciously ensure they never accumulate it.
Like undercharging for their services.
Exactly. Or they might engage in financial denial, refusing to look at bank statements altogether because the mere act of observing their own money induces a spike of anxiety.
They just close their eyes and hope the math works itself out, which usually means it doesn't.
Right. It never does.
So if avoiders are pushing money away out of fear or moral disgust, there has to be a demographic that does the exact opposite, people who pull it too close.
That brings us to the second script, which is money worship. This is the core, unshakable conviction that more money will solve absolutely all of your problems.
I mean, a lot of people probably think they have that script. If I just had $1 million, I wouldn't be stressed.
Sure, many people have fleeting thoughts like that. But true money worship is characterized by a terrifying corollary belief. And that belief is there will never be enough.
Oh, so it's an unquenchable thirst. You worship at the altar, but the altar is on a treadmill. Every time you take a step toward it, it moves a step away.
That is the exact mechanism. No matter how much a money worshiper accumulates, whether it's $10,000 or $10 million, that promised feeling of safety or ultimate happiness remains perpetually out of reach.
Because the script says the solution is always more.
Exactly. And this script is highly linked to disordered and destructive financial behaviors.
Like what? If they love money so much, wouldn't they just hoard it like a dragon?
Sometimes they do hoard, but more often they engage in compulsive buying. They're trying to purchase the feeling of relief that their script promises.
Oh, I see.
This leads to severe workaholism, sacrificing relationships and health for the next promotion. And it is heavily associated with carrying revolving credit card debt. They are chronically overspending in a desperate, ongoing attempt to literally buy the happiness that always seems just one purchase away.
It's a tragic loop. They were sprinting toward a finish line that doesn't exist. Now, the third script takes this obsession with money, but it seems to attach it directly to the ego.
Yes, the third script is money status. This is the belief that your net worth is entirely synonymous with your self-worth. It is a highly competitive, intensely materialistic worldview.
How does that mechanically differ from money worship? Because if I'm buying a bunch of luxury cars, am I a worshiper or a status seeker? They sound functionally identical from the outside.
The distinction lies entirely in the intended audience. A money worshiper is trying to soothe an internal wound. They believe buying the luxury car will fix their internal sadness and finally bring them personal peace.
And the status seeker?
A money status individual is trying to manage an external perception. They buy the luxury car to prove their value to the outside world.
Ah, so the status script requires an audience. If you put a money worshiper alone on a deserted island with $1 billion in a mall, they might still shop to feel better.
Yes.
But if you put a money status person on a deserted island, the money is useless because there's no one around to be impressed by it.
That is a brilliant way to isolate the variable. The research indicates this script is often found in individuals who grew up in families with a lower childhood socioeconomic background.
So it's compensatory. If you spent your formative years feeling lesser than because your family lived in the wrong zip code or you wore hand-me-down clothes, your adult brain might decide, I will never let anyone look down on me again.
Exactly. You spend your adulthood trying to visibly, loudly prove to the world that you have arrived.
Which means buying the visible markers of success.
Right. And that leads to a heavy reliance on signaling. They might pretend to have significantly more money than they actually do. They put a premium on buying the newest technology, the designer labels. Consequently, this script is linked to severe overspending. But the researchers also found a strong link between the money status script and pathological gambling.
Gambling? Wait, why gambling?
Because if your entire worth as a human being is tied to your financial status, you might be tempted to take extreme, irrational risks like high-stakes gambling, hoping for a massive, instantaneous windfall.
Something that will permanently elevate your perceived social standing.
Exactly. Slow, steady saving doesn't satisfy the immediate need for status.
Which perfectly sets up the contrast for the fourth and final script. Because this last one sounds like the exact opposite of a gambler. It sounds like the one script that a financial advisor might actually want you to have.
You are referring to money vigilance. Individuals operating with this script believe that money requires constant, unwavering watchfulness. They view money not with joy or desire, but with alertness, concern, and a lingering sense of pending danger.
They're the ultimate defensive players.
Yes. They are highly secretive about their finances. They don't talk about their income. They believe deeply in the moral importance of saving. They value extreme frugality. If they cannot pay cash for something, they simply will not buy it.
On paper, that sounds like financial health. They don't have credit card debt. They have emergency funds. They don't buy things to impress people.
Yeah.
What is the downside here?
The downside is the immense psychological toll. The research explicitly notes that while money vigilance acts as a protective factor against poverty and poor financial health, these individuals tend to have higher incomes and higher net worths. The internal experience is absolutely miserable.
Because they can't relax.
Right. The extreme wariness and constant anxiety mean they can never actually enjoy the benefits of their labor.
They build a fortress of money, but they live inside it like a prisoner.
Exactly. They have achieved the security, but their script won't allow them to feel secure. They are perpetually waiting for the other shoe to drop, terrified that one medical bill or one market downturn will wipe them out. The researchers found this script to be noticeably high among business professionals and corporate leaders.
So we have our four distinct players: the avoider who repels money, the worshiper who chases it endlessly, the status seeker who uses it as a megaphone, and the vigilant who guards it with their life.
That's the cast of characters.
Here is where it gets really interesting. Think about the collision course of human relationships. Moving in together, deciding to share a life. It isn't just about combining furniture or figuring out who does the dishes.
No, it's much deeper.
It's like trying to play a high-stakes board game where each person is operating from a completely different set of childhood rulebooks.
And neither person realizes the other is playing a different game. Because love, no matter how deep or genuine, does not magically erase these deeply ingrained psychological templates.
Right, let's walk through a hypothetical. Imagine a money worshiper marrying a money avoider. The worshiper's fundamental instinct is to acquire, to spend, to surround themselves with the comforts and items they deeply believe will finally bring peace to their chaotic internal world. That is their safety mechanism.
And meanwhile, the avoider sitting across the living room feels physical, visceral disgust and anxiety at the sight of that accumulation. The avoider's safety mechanism is to minimize, to ignore the money, to distance themselves from wealth.
So the worshiper comes home excited to talk about the new car they want to lease, viewing it as a celebration of their hard work. But the avoider wants to literally hide the bank statements in a drawer and not talk about it because it makes their chest tight.
What you were describing is the genesis of what relationship researchers call normative conflict. It is really vital to understand this concept.
Normative conflict.
Right. Normative conflict isn't a disagreement about facts. It isn't a debate over whether the math on a spreadsheet is correct. It is a conflict where two people's fundamental norms, their baselines of reality, are in direct opposition.
So neither person is objectively wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They're just entirely incompatible in their baseline assumptions.
Yes. In our hypothetical, the avoider views the worshiper as greedy, materialistic, and dangerously out of control. Simultaneously, the worshiper views the avoider as restrictive, unsupportive, and financially careless because they won't even sit down and look at the bills.
And this conflict happens silently, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Because most people have never heard the term money script. They don't know they have one. They just think their way is the normal way and their partner is just being stubborn or unreasonable.
Exactly.
If you are listening to this right now, think about your own visceral reactions. When you get inexplicably anxious about paying for dinner, or when you feel that sudden desperate rush of needing to buy something you don't actually need, which 7-year-old inside of you is actually holding the credit card? What childhood rulebook are you still playing by?
That lack of awareness is the true danger, because when differing money scripts clash, the resulting emotional friction is incredibly uncomfortable. And human beings are biologically wired to avoid sustained emotional discomfort.
We run from it.
We do. When we feel that our partner fundamentally will not understand our financial instincts, we don't usually sit down and have a nuanced conversation about Albert Bandura and our childhood flashpoint.
No, we definitely do not do that.
We simply seek to avoid the conflict altogether. And that avoidance leads us directly into a much darker behavioral territory. When we fear judgment, we don't necessarily change our behavior, we just start hiding it.
The silent breach. This brings us to a massively important and honestly kind of shocking piece of research from the Journal of Consumer Research. We are moving from the subconscious programming into active daily deception.
Right.
We're talking about financial infidelity.
Yes. The researchers on this massive project, Gerbinsky, Gladstone, Nikolova, and Olson, started with a very simple observation. Romantic relationships, particularly marriages, are theoretically built on a foundation of absolute trust. Yet partners are frequently actively dishonest about their financial behaviors.
They hide their spending, they lie about debt, they conceal savings. But the word infidelity carries immense weight. It implies a deep structural betrayal. Buying a $5 coffee on the way to work and forgetting to mention it to your spouse isn't infidelity, right? We need to define the boundaries of this behavior.
The researchers knew they had to define it with absolute precision. Financial infidelity cannot be accidental. According to their framework, it requires two distinct sequential steps.
Okay, what's step one?
First, the individual must engage in a financial act that they actively expect will elicit their romantic partner's disapproval. They know before they do it that it will cause an argument or a judgment.
So the expectation of disapproval.
Right. And second, they must intentionally fail to disclose that behavior to their partner. Both the expectation of disapproval and the intentional concealment are absolutely necessary.
Let's test this definition with a few scenarios because the nuance is what makes this so fascinating. Let's say I go out and buy a very expensive piece of tech gear. I know my partner is going to be incredibly annoyed because we had explicitly agreed we were saving for a kitchen renovation. So the expectation of disapproval is there.
Yeah.
But I walk in the front door, I set the box on the kitchen island, and I say, I know you're going to be mad, but I bought this. Is that financial infidelity?
No. It is certainly a breach of a financial agreement, and it will likely cause a significant normative conflict, but it is not financial infidelity. You committed an act that elicited expected disapproval, but you did not fulfill the second criteria. You did not conceal it. You chose the conflict over the deception.
Okay, flip the scenario. Let's say I secretly take $50 out of every single paycheck. I siphon it off into a completely separate unlinked bank account for 6 months. I am intentionally, methodically concealing this money. But my goal is to surprise my partner with a weekend getaway to the mountains for our anniversary. Is that financial infidelity?
Also, no. You have the intentional concealment, but you do not have the expectation of partner disapproval. In fact, your entire motivation is anticipating their joy and gratitude. Financial infidelity only occurs when you combine the fear of disapproval with the act of hiding. It requires knowing your partner would say no and choosing to circumvent them entirely.
So the obvious question is, how common is this? Because when we hear infidelity, we tend to think of it as a fringe behavior, something only a small fraction of terrible, manipulative people do.
The prevalence is staggering, honestly, and it cuts across all demographics. According to the data cited in the Journal of Consumer Research study, among people who explicitly pool their finances with a partner, meaning they have joint accounts and shared visibility, 41% admit to committing financial deceptions.
41%. Almost half of the couples walking down the street who claim to share their money are actively lying to each other about it. And what is the fallout?
It is severe. Of those who engage in it, 75% report that this financial deceit has actively harmed their relationship. The National Endowment for Financial Education regularly runs surveys that confirm this isn't a statistical anomaly. It is a pervasive systemic issue in modern marriages.
So what exactly are they hiding? Are we talking about secret second families and offshore bank accounts?
Well, while those extreme cases exist, the researchers identified 12 distinct categories of financial infidelity, and the vast majority of them are incredibly mundane.
Like what?
The highest frequency behaviors are hiding or lying about everyday spending and hiding or lying about savings, such as lying about the actual balance of an account or hiding the very existence of an account entirely.
Wait, hiding savings? I get hiding spending. You don't want to get yelled at for buying golf clubs. But why hide savings?
Usually as an escape hatch. If someone feels trapped in a relationship, or if they are a money vigilant married to a money worshiper and they are terrified their partner will spend everything, they might secretly siphon off funds to build a hidden wall of security. It feels protective to them, but it is a massive breach of trust to the shared system. The other major categories include creating undisclosed debt, undisclosed gambling, and hiding or lying about income.
Hiding income, meaning I got a $5,000 bonus at work, but I'm just going to deposit it into my personal account and tell my spouse I didn't get a bonus this year.
Exactly. It's an active failure to disclose shared resources.
Okay, so we know what they're doing, but how does this actually happen in the wild? Because the researchers didn't just ask people to fill out a survey and admit to being liars, right? They actually designed field studies to watch human beings commit financial infidelity in real time.
Yeah, and the methodology of these field studies is brilliant because it isolates the exact moment a human brain decides to choose deception. It illustrates the mechanical process of concealment. Let's look at what we'll call the amusement park study. The researchers brought participants in and asked them to imagine a specific scenario. They are at a crowded amusement park with a group of friends, but their spouse is not there. A friend suggests they all buy a $100 fast pass to skip the 2-hour lines. The catch is, $100 is double the price of general admission.
Setting up the friction.
Right. Then, the researchers explicitly prompt the participant. Imagine that your spouse would strongly disapprove of you spending this much money on a fast pass.
Boom. There's the expectation of disapproval. The first required step.
Once that expectation is established, the participant is given a choice of how to execute the purchase. They can use their joint credit card, which their spouse can easily see on the banking app, or they can use their personal individual credit card, which the spouse has no access to.
And what happened?
The researchers found that individuals who scored high on their specialized financial infidelity proneness scale overwhelmingly chose the personal credit card.
They chose the invisible mechanism. The desire for the fast pass was stronger than the desire for transparency, but the fear of the argument was stronger than both. So they chose the payment method that effectively erased the digital footprint. It's a calculated workaround.
Yeah.
But that was just a hypothetical scenario. They actually pushed this further, didn't they? They forced people to make a physical choice.
Yes, the Midwestern University study. This is perhaps the most fascinating piece of the research because it moves from hypothetical imagination into physical bodily behavior.
Okay, set the scene for me.
The researchers set up a table on a university campus right before a massive college football game. They specifically approached individuals who were wearing wedding rings but were walking alone, separated from their spouses.
Targeting the demographic, like, are you married and are you currently unobserved?
Precisely. They offered these individuals a chance to participate in a short on-the-spot survey. The compensation for completing the survey was a snack and a lottery ticket to win a free, luxurious massage.
A massage they're winning just for themselves, not a couple's massage.
Correct. So the participant fills out the survey, but the actual experiment begins when the survey is over. The research assistant hands them the lottery ticket, but then offers them a choice of how to carry it. The assistant presents 2 different envelopes to put the ticket inside.
Okay.
One is a brightly colored envelope, clearly and boldly labeled massage lottery ticket. The other is a completely plain, unmarked white envelope.
Oh, wow. The psychology of that moment is incredible.
The researchers just stood back and noted which envelope the participant instinctively reached for as they walked away, and the data was clear. Those who were prone to financial infidelity overwhelmingly chose the unmarked white envelope.
They physically manifested the concealment. They played out the scenario in their head in a fraction of a second. They imagined going home, dropping their keys on the counter. If they have the bright neon envelope, the spouse is going to say, "What's that?"
Right.
That prompts a conversation. "I want a massage." "Oh, why didn't you get a ticket for me?" Or, "When are you going to have time for a massage when we have to paint the garage?"
It's the physical equivalent of clearing your browser history. The neon envelope is a conversational landmine. The white envelope is camouflage. They're actively removing the cue that would prompt the conflict.
And the researchers even tracked this behavior into our phones, didn't they? They looked at actual banking app data.
That was the final and most compelling piece of evidence because it relied on objective, real-world data, not just lab experiments. The researchers partnered with a popular couple's money management mobile app.
What did the app do?
When couples download this app, they link their respective bank accounts so they can both see a comprehensive shared financial picture. But the app developers built in a privacy settings feature. Users have the ability to manually change the visibility of any specific account or transaction.
What's a default setting?
The default is all me and the partner sees the total balance in every single transaction that goes in or out. But a user can actively navigate deep into the settings menu and change the visibility to balance only or owner only. If they select owner only, that entire account or specific transactions becomes completely invisible on the partner's screen.
So it's not just an omission. I forgot to tell you, it requires active digital effort to hide it. You have to open the app, find the menu, and toggle the switch to hide.
It is an act of commission, and the server data showed a direct, statistically significant correlation. Users who scored high on the financial infidelity scale were far more likely to actively go into the app's settings and deliberately hide accounts and transactions from their partners.
What's fascinating here is the sheer variety of length people will go to. Choosing the personal card at the amusement park, grabbing the blank envelope at the football game, digging into the settings menu of an app while sitting on the couch next to their spouse.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, to what we were talking about earlier with the deeply ingrained money scripts, why is this happening? You established at the very beginning that we were observing this without judgment. So what is the calm, analytical, behavioral reason for why 41% of people are sneaking around with unmarked envelopes and toggling app settings?
It fundamentally returns to the pain of normative conflict. In a committed relationship, especially an interdependent marriage, the couple tries to function as a single, unified system. But within that system, you still have 2 distinct individuals who possess their own preferences, desires, and deeply rooted childhood money scripts. When we observe this analytically, we see that financial infidelity is rarely malicious.
It's not a James Bond villain plot to slowly bankrupt the family and flee the country.
No.
Right.
In the vast majority of cases, it is simply a coping mechanism. It is the result of an intense, unbearable tension between 2 opposing forces. The desire to maintain your own personal autonomy, your fundamental right to make a choice for yourself, and the fear of your partner's judgment or disapproval.
That makes a lot of sense.
When a person feels that their autonomy is being suffocated by their partner's clashing money script and they lack the communication tools to resolve that conflict safely, concealment becomes the path of least resistance. It allows them to fulfill their desire for the massage or the fast pass while simultaneously avoiding the agonizing argument.
I want to push back on this a little, or at least explore the feeling of it from the perspective of the person hiding things. Because equality in a relationship doesn't mean a complete lack of privacy.
Absolutely not.
If I am married, I am still allowed to have my own thoughts. I'm allowed to have my own friendships. I don't have to report every conversation I have to my spouse. So why does it feel so different with money? Why does the act of buying a coffee or a jacket or entering a free massage lottery feel like such a massive betrayal if it's not completely shared?
That is a brilliant question, and it touches on why money is uniquely volatile compared to other aspects of a relationship. Money is not just paper or digital numbers. It is the universally agreed upon representation of resources. And in a shared mammalian life, resources equal survival, security, and future potential.
Survival.
Right. When you hide a financial action, even a small one, you are unilaterally altering the shared resource pool without your partner's consent. Even if the monetary amount is trivial, like a $5 coffee, the psychological implication is profound. It sends a subconscious signal that says, I am drawing a boundary here and you are not allowed inside it. I am making decisions about our survival without you.
Wow. And what we hide actually varies by gender, doesn't it? The specific objects we use to assert that autonomy.
It does. The research incorporates a survey by CEI Solutions that provides some illustrative demographic details. They found distinct patterns. Men are significantly more likely to secretly spend money on alcohol and music or entertainment.
And women.
Women, on the other hand, are more likely to hide spending on clothing and gifts for others.
That is so interesting to me. Gifts for others. It's not even selfish spending, necessarily. It's not buying a sports car. It could be a woman feeling that her partner will judge her for being too generous or spending too much on a niece's birthday present or helping out a friend. So she hides the generosity to avoid the friction.
Exactly. The money, the alcohol, the clothing, the gifts, these are just the objects being hidden.
Oh, yeah.
They're merely the symptoms of the underlying disease. The real currency being lost in these silent breaches is trust. Every single time a partner chooses the unmarked envelope or toggles the app setting to owner, only they're quietly reinforcing their own internal belief that it is not safe to be honest in their relationship.
So if we look at the map of our deep dive so far, we have the origin of the problem, which is clashing childhood money scripts that dictate how we view the world. And we have the symptom of the problem, which is normative conflict leading to financial infidelity and hiding behaviors. If hiding is the symptom, what is the structural cure? How do couples physically arrange their money to shape their behavior so they don't feel the suffocating need to reach for the white envelope?
Well, this is where we move out of psychology and into the actual mechanics of merging. How a couple structures their bank accounts can act as either a catalyst for conflict or a behavioral framework for harmony.
Okay, let's talk frameworks.
If we examine the materials from the Soft Money platform, Kelly Klingeman's financial planning frameworks, and the therapeutic guides from Oriavia, we see that modern couples generally sort themselves into 3 typical systems of account management.
Right. Let's walk through them because most people just pick one by default without thinking about the behavioral consequences. The first is full pooling.
Full pooling is the traditional RS model. It is the historical default for marriage. All income from both partners, regardless of who earns more, goes directly into one single massive joint checking account. All bills, all savings, all individual spending, every coffee, every haircut comes out of that one account. There is no yours or mine. Everything is visible to everyone at all times.
It sounds incredibly romantic. Total unity. Two become one. But based on everything we just discussed about money scripts, it sounds like a psychological powder keg.
It really can be.
If a money worshiper, a spender, and a money vigilant, a saver, share one massive pool, the saver is going to have a literal panic attack every time the spender buys lunch. And the spender is going to feel like they are constantly being monitored by a parole officer.
Precisely. Full pooling requires a massive amount of philosophical alignment and constant, exhausting communication to work without breeding resentment. If your scripts don't match, full pooling guarantees daily normative conflict, which leads many modern couples to retreat to the second system, the polar opposite, which is full separation.
The yours and mine model.
Yes. You keep entirely separate accounts. Your paychecks never mix. You sit down, calculate the shared household bills, rent, utilities, groceries, and you split them. Usually this takes the form of a strict 50-50 split.
Which sounds very clean, very modern, very independent. I pay my half, you pay your half, and what I do with the rest of my money is absolutely none of your business.
Yeah.
It seems like it would solve the autonomy problem entirely.
It sounds fair on the surface, but financial planners and therapists note a profound psychological and practical flaw in full separation, particularly when couples rely on the 50-50 split. A 50-50 split is almost never equitable if the two partners have different incomes.
Like, break that math down extensively, because the difference between equal and equitable is a massive behavioral concept that destroys relationships.
Let's run a scenario. Imagine partner A makes $100,000 a year. Partner B makes $50,000 a year. They live together, and their shared household survival bills, rent, utilities, basic food amount to $40,000 a year.
Okay, I'm following.
Under a strict 50-50 full separation model, they each pay exactly $20,000 toward the bills. It is equal. But look at what happens to the remainder. Partner A pays their $20K, and they have $80,000 left over for their private savings, vacations, and lifestyle.
And partner B.
Partner B pays their $20K, and they have only $30,000 left over.
Wow. Let's look at the percentages there. Partner B is spending almost half, 40% of their total gross income just to keep the lights on and survive in the shared house. Partner A is only spending 20% of their income on the exact same survival.
Exactly.
So partner B is going to feel constantly squeezed, constantly stressed about buying a new pair of shoes, while partner A feels wealthy and relaxed. They're literally sleeping in the same bed, but they are experiencing two completely different socioeconomic realities. That is a terrifying recipe for deep, corrosive resentment.
It absolutely is. Over time, the lower earner begins to feel devalued and exhausted, while the higher earner often feels completely oblivious to the strain, wondering why their partner is always stressed about money when everything is split fairly.
Because equal isn't equitable.
Right. And this is exactly why the financial planners and researchers consistently point to the third system as the most successful structure for long-term relationship satisfaction, the hybrid model.
Yours, mine, and our system.
Correct. In the hybrid model, you have a joint account for all shared expenses and shared goals. But instead of funding it 50-50, it is funded equitably, usually proportionally based on income. If you make 70% of the household income, you contribute 70% of the household bills. And crucially, alongside that joint account, both partners maintain individual private accounts.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. If you look at the architecture of the hybrid system, it literally builds a ethical structural buffer against financial infidelity.
It really does.
Think back to the Journal of Consumer Research definition we established. Financial infidelity is an act expected to elicit disapproval, combined with intentional concealment. If you have a hybrid system, you have an agreed-upon mine account. And the rule of the mine account is, this is your money, no questions asked, no judgment allowed. By creating that space, you completely eliminate the expectation of disapproval.
Exactly. You engineer the conflict out of the system. You are structurally granting each other autonomy. If a partner wants to buy a ridiculous pair of shoes or an expensive fast pass at an amusement park, they don't need to reach for the unmarked white envelope. They just use the debit card tied to their mine account. Because it is a designated, pre-negotiated safe space for individual choice, there is no need to hide.
But how do you actually run that day-to-day without losing your mind? Because traditional budgeting is a nightmare for most people. Sitting down at the end of the month with a complex spreadsheet, tracking every single coffee receipt, realizing you went $40 over in the entertainment category, and feeling guilty about it. It feels like homework that you fail every month.
Yeah. Traditional budgeting often fails, particularly for busy, high-income, or dual-career couples, because it is inherently backward-looking. It forces you to look at history, it makes you examine what you already did when it's too late to change it, and judge yourself for your lack of discipline. It naturally induces shame.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
Financial planner Kelly Klingeman offers a brilliant behavioral alternative to this. She calls it the first step cash management system. It abandons the spreadsheet of shame entirely. Instead, it is forward-looking. It uses the physical, automated flow of money to set guardrails on your behavior before you even have a chance to make a mistake.
She breaks the entire financial life down into 3 specific automated buckets, right?
Yes. The 3 buckets are static, control, and dynamic. Understanding the mechanics of these buckets is key to removing the daily stress of money management. Let's look at the first one.
Okay, what's the static bucket?
First is the static bucket. Conceptually, this represents the past. These are your 30-day recurring bills. Your mortgage or rent, your car payment, your Netflix and Spotify subscriptions, your childcare costs. These are the fixed expenses that you committed to in the past, and they arrive every month like clockwork.
How do you mechanically handle the static bucket so it doesn't cause arguments?
You calculate the total monthly cost of these fixed bills. Let's say it's $4,000. You have exactly that amount direct deposited from your paychecks into the joint static checking account. And critically, Klingman suggests setting up all these bills to auto-pay on a single joint credit card. Then, you set that credit card to auto-pay its full balance from the static checking account every month.
So the boring survival stuff is completely on autopilot. You're building credit points, but you never actually log in to pay a utility bill. It requires zero daily decision-making.
Exactly. It just happens in the background.
Okay, what's the second bucket?
The second is the control bucket. Conceptually, this represents the present. This is your variable spending. This is the messy part of life. Groceries, eating out at restaurants, filling up the gas tank, buying a coffee, running into Target for paper towels, and coming out with a lamp.
We've all been there.
Right. But the behavioral trick here is the time frame. The control bucket does not operate on a monthly budget. It operates on a strict 7-day weekly time frame.
Why weekly? Why not just say we have $800 for groceries this month?
Because human beings are terrible at pacing themselves over 30 days. It is a known psychological flaw. If you have a monthly grocery budget, your brain feels rich on day 1. You buy steak and organic berries. By day 28, the money is gone and you feel starved, eating rice and beans. A 7-day window is much easier for the human brain to comprehend and manage.
That makes total sense. So how is it funded?
You fund the shared control bucket with an automatic weekly transfer from your main account on, say, every Friday. And here is the vital behavioral guardrail. You pay for these variable expenses using a joint debit card, not a credit card.
Because with a credit card, the pain of paying is disconnected from the act of buying. You just swipe the plastic and your brain says, future me will deal with this. A debit card enforces physical scarcity. When the weekly transfer of $300 is gone on Thursday, it's gone. You don't eat out on Thursday night.
Precisely. It removes the cognitive friction of deciding what to spend. You just look at the app. Is there money in the weekly control bucket? Yes. Then buy the coffee. No. Then make it at home.
So simple.
And crucially, this weekly control bucket system is exactly where the individual yours and mine accounts live. Alongside the joint transfer for groceries, you set up an automatic weekly transfer of a set amount, say $100, to each partner's private individual debit card. That is your unquestioned autonomy.
The judgment-free zone.
Yes. And finally, the third bucket is the dynamic bucket. Conceptually, this represents the future. These are your savings goals. The standard human behavior is to put all our money in checking, pay our bills, spend whatever we want, and then vaguely hope to transfer whatever is left over into a giant amorphous savings account at the end of the month.
Which usually means absolutely nothing is left over.
Exactly. Klingeman's system forces you to frame your savings goals as non-discretionary expenses. You pay your future self first.
What does that look like mechanically?
You don't just have one big savings account. You create multiple specific high-yield savings accounts with distinct names. One account is named Emergency Fund. Another is named Italy Vacation 2028. Another is Kitchen Renovation. You automate transfers into these specific accounts the very day your paycheck hits, before the money even reaches the control bucket. You visually separate the goals, and you watch the specific balances grow.
It completely changes the emotional valence of saving. You aren't restricting yourself by not spending. You are actively, aggressively funding the life you want. You are buying the Italy trip a little bit every week.
Exactly. It's empowering.
But let's be realistic here. Setting up all these buckets, calculating the transfers, making sure the auto pays are actually hitting, reviewing the savings goals, it's work. It's invisible administrative labor.
It is significant labor. And this allows us to gently drift into a massive concept highlighted by the Modern Husband's platform, the connection between financial management and overall household management. They utilize the fair play system, a framework originally created by Eve Rodsky to divide domestic labor.
Right.
Money management is, at its core, a household chore. It is exactly like doing the laundry or cleaning the gutters. And like any chore, if the entire burden of it falls on only one partner, it will inevitably breed resentment.
The fair play system talks deeply about the mental load. the cognitive labor of a household that usually goes entirely unseen. They break a chore down into three parts. CPE: conceive, plan, execute.
Exactly. Let's look at how CPE applies to the budget buckets. Often, one partner acts as the executor. They log in and hit the pay button on the credit card bill. They think they are managing the finances.
But they really aren't doing the heavy lifting.
Right. Because the other partner is the one who conceived of the budget, researched the high-yield savings accounts, calculated the necessary percentages for the weekly transfers, and planned the cash flow so the account wouldn't overdraw when the mortgage hit.
The conceiver and the planner are doing 90% of the cognitive work, while the executor just pushes a button and claims they did half the chore.
Fair Play argues that for a system to be truly equitable and resentment-free, one person should own a task from start to finish: conceive, plan, and execute. If one partner agrees to manage the dynamic bucket savings, they need to own the entire process. They need to research the rates, plan the transfer dates, and execute the movement of the money. They cannot just sit back and wait to be told what button to click.
And they also have to agree on something called the minimum standard of care, which I think is a huge stumbling block for couples.
It really is.
If I am in charge of the weekly control bucket, my standard of care might be, well, we didn't overdraw the account, so I did a great job. But my partner's standard of care might be, every single transaction must be perfectly categorized and color-coded in our banking app by 5 p.m. on Sunday. If we don't actively agree on what the word done looks like, we are going to fight, even if the financial system is technically working and the bills are paid.
That is a highly astute observation of human friction. A system only works if the humans involved agree on the parameters and engage with it willingly. Which brings us to a critical transition point. We have the buckets, we have the rules, but how do we get our partner to actually look at it?
Right.
How do we change the emotional experience of managing money from something stressful, combative, and boring to something engaging and collaborative? This is the psychology of planning.
Technology plays a massive role here. We looked at the Marriage Kids and Money platform's deep dive into budget apps, and it's fascinating how different apps cater to entirely different psychological profiles. The app you choose can actually dictate how you feel about your money.
The architecture of the technology absolutely shapes the behavior of the user. Take an app like YNB, which stands for You Need a Budget. Their entire software philosophy is built on the phrase, give every dollar a job.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, it forces a highly proactive, zero-based approach. When you get paid, you must assign every single dollar to a specific category until your balance to assign is zero. It is excellent for people who need intense structure or avoiders who need to be forced to confront the reality head-on.
But if you take someone who is already highly money vigilant, someone who already obsesses over every penny and is terrified of making a mistake, putting them on YNB might trigger an anxiety attack. It might make them obsessive. They might prefer an interface like Good Budget.
Yes. Good Budget takes the old-school physical cash envelope system where your grandparents literally put paper grocery money in one manila envelope and rent money in another, and digitizes it. It's visually simpler. You just look at the digital envelope to see if it's empty.
And then you have platforms like Honeydew, which are built specifically from the ground up for couples. They incorporate modern social media dynamics into banking.
Yeah, that one is fascinating.
I found this feature wild. You can actually react to a partner's transaction inside the app.
Yes, you can drop a thumbs up emoji or a heart on a transaction, or use a chat feature attached to a specific purchase to discuss it.
I can see that going spectacularly well or terribly wrong. A thumbs up emoji on a grocery run is great validation. But dropping a question mark emoji on a $200 Amazon charge at midnight might start a physical war in the living room.
It definitely could.
But regardless of the app, the goal of all this technology is to bridge a massive psychological gap, something Combank identified in their extensive financial well-being research.
Yes, Combank highlights a fundamental evolutionary cognitive hurdle called present versus future self-bias.
Let's really dig into this because this explains why saving money feels so physically difficult for almost everyone.
The human brain, shaped by millions of years of evolution, is wired to prioritize immediate survival over long-term, abstract planning. If you are a hunter-gatherer, a calorie today is infinitely more valuable than a theoretical calorie a year from now.
Right, because you might not be alive a year from now.
Exactly. Therefore, it is incredibly difficult for our modern brains to conceptualize our one-day future. When you think about yourself 30 years from now in retirement, The neural pathways that light up in your brain are the same pathways that light up when you think about a complete stranger.
That is mind-blowing. When I try to save for retirement, my brain literally thinks I am giving my money away to a stranger. No wonder I don't want to do it.
Exactly. In behavioral economics experiments, researchers will offer participants a choice. I will give you $10 today, right now, or I will give you $15 tomorrow. Rationally, a 50% return in one day is an incredible investment. You should wait for tomorrow.
But people don't wait.
No, a significant number of people choose the $10 today. The immediate, tangible, smaller reward triggers a massive dopamine release. The larger delayed reward is abstract and fails to stimulate the same neurochemical response. Saving for a house deposit or a college fund requires us to sacrifice the tangible, dopamine-rich $10 today for an abstract $15 that we might not see for a decade. Our brains actively fight us on this.
So how do you hack that biology? How do you make the future self feel real enough and the future reward tangible enough that you are willing to sacrifice the $10 today?
You have to change the context of the conversation. You have to manufacture the dopamine for the future goal. Dr. Amanda Kraft, a financial therapist, suggests a behavioral intervention. She says we must entirely replace the dreaded budget meeting with what she calls money dates.
A money date. I have to admit, calling a budget review a date sounds a bit like trying to rebrand a root canal. Hey honey, pour a glass of Cabernet, put on some jazz, and let's stare into the abyss of our crippling student loan debt. It doesn't change the fact that someone is drilling into my nerves.
I get that. It can sound contrived initially, but the psychological reframing is vital. Language dictates reality. Think about the phrase budget meeting. It implies a corporate review. It implies a search for errors, a feeling of being called into the principal's office to be scolded for overspending on takeout. The body naturally goes into a defensive posture.
Oh, totally. Defenses are up immediately.
Right. So a money date is designed to be a safe, forward-looking space. It is a collaborative planning session. But to work, Dr. Kraft provides strict behavioral guidelines.
What are the guidelines?
First, it must be held at a neutral time. You do not initiate a money date right after a stressful 10-hour workday, and you certainly do not spring it on your partner in the middle of an argument about something else.
You don't weaponize the spreadsheet.
Exactly. Second, it must be in a relaxed, comfortable environment. And third, the communication style has to fundamentally shift. No pointing fingers.
Which means relying heavily on I statements, right?
Correct. Instead of saying, you never care about saving money, which immediately triggers defensiveness and kicks off a normative conflict based on money scripts, you rephrase it. You say, I feel anxious when we don't have a clear savings plan for the future. You are taking ownership of your emotional state rather than accusing their character. And critically, the focus of the date must remain relentlessly on the future, not past mistakes.
So what is the actual process and flow of a successful check-in? If we sit down for this date, what are we supposed to actually do for 20 minutes?
It follows a specific 3-step sequence designed to build momentum.
Okay, step 1.
Step 1, acknowledge what is working. You must start with positive reinforcement. Celebrate a small win. Even if the win is just, hey, we successfully kept our static bucket bills automated this month and nothing bounced. You are training the brain to associate money conversations with positive feedback.
Start on a high note. Love it.
Step 2. Check the control and dynamic buckets. This is a brief mechanical check. How did the weekly variable spending go? Did we run out of grocery money on Thursday? Do we need to adjust the transfer amount? Are the automatic transfers to the high-yield savings account still happening?
Just reviewing the mechanics.
Yeah.
And step 3.
Step 3, review the shared goals. And this is the most important part. It must be done without scorekeeping. You are looking at the vision you built for the future and asking one simple question. Are our current daily behaviors aligning with the life we said we wanted to build?
I want to ask a tough question here.
Yeah.
Because this all sounds incredibly logical and harmonious if both partners are willing to sit down with the wine, open the app, and talk about the future. What happens when one partner just flat out refuses to participate? When you say, let's have a money date, and they cross their arms, lean back, and say, I work hard, I make the money, I am not living my life on a spreadsheet, leave me alone.
It is an incredibly common roadblock. And if we look at the psychological insights from our sources, the analytical response is that this resistance is rarely malicious. It rarely means they don't care about the family security or your anxiety.
So what does it mean?
Resistance usually means the budget feels like a restriction, a punishment, rather than a roadmap to something desirable. They are likely a money avoider who feels physically sick looking at numbers, or a money worshiper who feels their core script of buying freedom is under attack by your vigilance.
So pushing the spreadsheet closer to their face is just going to make them retreat further.
Yes, the solution is not to double down on the math. The solution is to step back entirely and align the spending plan with exciting, highly desirable shared goals. If a budget is just a rigid list of bills and restrictions, it is depressing. No one wants to look at it.
Yeah, nobody wants to look at a list of things they can't do.
But if the budget is presented as the mathematical path to a winter vacation in the Alps, or the tool that will allow you to buy a home with a yard for the dog, or the mechanism that will grant one partner the financial freedom to quit a toxic job and start a business, the emotional valence completely changes.
You have to attach the math to the dream, which is exactly what you were talking about at the very beginning when we discussed the ethereal romance hitting the reality of dollars. Instead of asking your partner to look at a spreadsheet and tell you why they spent $40 on Tuesday, what if you ask them a completely different question? What if you ask them, what does financial security actually feel like to you?
That is the perfect question.
Does it feel like a fully funded emergency account so you never have to panic about a car repair? Does it feel like the ability to go to a nice restaurant and order whatever you want without checking the banking app first? Does it feel like having enough resources to comfortably take care of aging parents? If you can use gentle curiosity to figure out what safety actually feels like to the person sitting across the table from you, the math just becomes the invisible tool to get them there. It stops being a weapon.
That is the ultimate crux of financial harmony. It is shifting the dynamic from two individuals facing off, fighting over a limited pile of resources, to two people sitting side by side on the same side of the table, looking outward, using their combined resources to build a shared reality.
Which brings us full circle on our journey today. We started this deep dive in the subconscious. We look at the origin stories of our behaviors, the childhood money scripts written before we were 7 years old, the avoiders pushing money away, the worshipers running on the treadmill, the status seekers signaling to the audience, and the vigilant guarding the fortress.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. We saw how those clashing rule books lead inevitably to normative conflict. And we observed how the fear of that conflict pushes 41% of people into the shadows of financial infidelity, hiding fast passes, toggling app settings, and instinctively reaching for unmarked white envelopes to protect their autonomy.
And we explored the structural solutions to that deception, moving away from the hidden resentment of a strict 50-50 split and moving toward a hybrid system that builds physical boundaries for autonomy, utilizing forward-looking mechanisms like Kelly Klingeman's static, control, and dynamic buckets to automate behavior and remove the daily shame of traditional budgeting.
And finally, we realized that the technology and the bucket systems only work if we hack our own biology. Overcoming our present bias through gentle communication, transforming combative budget meetings into forward-looking money dates, and focusing relentlessly on what we are building rather than what we are restricting. Money is always the tangible anchor that starts the conversation, but it is the understanding of the deep, fragile human behavior beneath it that actually carries the relationship forward. So what does this all mean? We're going to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over.
Go for it.
We talked extensively today about how our money scripts were written for us when we were young children. They were written by observing parents who were likely just fumbling through, navigating their own unspoken financial fears, traumas, and flashpoints. You inherit a script that you didn't ask for. But if that is the mechanical truth of how humans learn, what kind of script are you currently writing for the people observing you today? Think about the children, the friends, the partner, silently watching how you handle a restaurant bill, watching how you react to a sudden expensive emergency or how you process an unexpected windfall. You aren't just managing your bank account in a vacuum. You are broadcasting a philosophy of survival to everyone around you. What is it saying?
It is a profound question and a vital lens to carry with you as you navigate your choices.
This has been a deep dive into the hidden currents of your financial life. Thank you for your time, your curiosity, and for exploring the murky waters of human behavior with us. Until next time.